Michael, let's start with the Joe Burrow news. You've been a general manager before. You've been a front office executive for a number of years. When you see that happen at training camp practice, I would imagine the feeling is almost as if it's like a body blow. Like, oh my goodness, all this work that we've built up, our season might be done, and we're only a few days into camp. Luckily for the Bengals, we don't think it's going to be that serious. It's just a calf strain. He was out several weeks, but, I mean, that's got to be a very nerve-wracking moment.
Yeah, it is. And I think when you first see it and he reaches for his lower body, like Dan Marino, I can remember when Dan Marino in Cleveland tore his Achilles. He just reached down, and all of a sudden he kind of had to get helped off the field. So it's the same thing. Burrow reached down, and then he went right on the ground. Now, we knew he had a sleeve on his calf, so it probably was. But, you know, this is going to derail his summer. And I'm sure that the Bengals are going to say that, you know, he's not going to play. He didn't play last preseason.
Yeah.
So he didn't throw one pass last preseason. So the fact he's going to miss time in terms of the preseason games is insignificant. What's significant is the fact that he is going to miss practice time. And they're going to have to put Trevor Siemian in the game. And they're going to have to put Jake Browning. And I'm sure they're going to have to sign another quarterback because right now they only have 2 quarterbacks who can practice on the roster. That's not enough. So they're going to have to bring someone else in. And we know this about the Bengals as a betting community. We know they don't start fast, right? Last year, 5 turnovers in the opening game. Burrow didn't play at all in the summer. Even though he practiced with the team, he didn't play. So they don't start quickly. They went overtime in the first year. They beat Minnesota. But for the most part, we know that I'm shocked that the betting line hasn't moved slightly or ticked a little bit towards Cleveland because of this news. Not that I don't think he's going to play, because I do, but I'm just not sure that this team can be in sync if he's not practicing, because we know even when he practiced, he wasn't in sync last year. They started 5-4, right? They get off to a slower start. They build momentum as the season goes on, and he builds momentum.
Yeah, and I think intuitively, you already kind of liked Cleveland in that game before this all happened. Like, we talked about this game about a month or even 6 weeks ago, and you said that, hey, Cleveland week 1, that's an interesting spot, given the fact that Cincinnati does start slow under Zac Taylor. They kind of used the first half of the season to kind of start to progress, and then they really ascend in the second half of the season, kind of wanting to finish stronger than what they actually start. But speaking of Zac Taylor, he spoke with the media yesterday to give an update on the status of Joe Burrow and how long he'll be out in training camp.
I'll start with Joe. Calf strain. It'll take several weeks, and that's the information we got right now.
Several weeks taken into the regular season, potentially?
Several weeks to several weeks.
How much time with Joe at camp of practice would he need to be ready for you comfortably?
Joe got more days this July than he's ever had in the NFL. And so I feel really good about the progress we made during those July practices with Joe. And when he's able to get back, we'll be able to get to working with him.
How's Joe doing personally right now?
Good. Joe's always takes him stride, and he's the same guy every day.
Several weeks is several weeks. And
more reps than he got at any other time in July? Wow, that's shocking to know.
That's hard to believe, right?
Yeah, that's hard to believe. I mean, they only been practicing since how long? They don't play in the Hall of Fame game. So that means the last summer he was Was he putting suntan lotion on? Was he the copper tone baby? What was going on? I don't understand.
He had the appendectomy. So he had the appendectomy. So I guess maybe that's why he was not able to get the reps. But I was like, what about the season leading up to his rookie year? I'm pretty sure he got more reps that summer than he did this summer.
Yeah, I would think so. Now, you remember the 1 year coming off the ACL tear that he probably didn't get a lot. But look, the fact is they start slow, and even more so this year because, you know, the strength of their team typically is their ability to play great defense, right? You know, and so, but they've got a lot of moving parts in their secondary. Dak Hill will now assume the strong safety job, the first-round pick from Michigan last year, you know, because they've lost Von Bell. They lost Jesse Bates. And when you watch them play defensively, those two guys were the communicators of the defense. They were able to, you know, organize everything. Now they've got Nick Scott in there. Will Jordan Battle end up beating out one of these guys for the starting role? He was a third-round pick from Alabama this year. So, you know, when you look at the secondary particularly, it's got to be a little bit of a concern when you're going and you're starting with younger players or players who don't have as much experience. And then with your quarterback situation, not getting the reps. So, look, I don't expect him to miss the opener. I'm just not saying he's going to play the opener like he typically would play the conference championship game.
And to your point, he missed a lot of time last year with the appendectomy, didn't get those reps in training camp. And he didn't look like himself week 1 against Pittsburgh. Now, give Pittsburgh credit. That's also a really good defense. Minka Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, those guys were making plays in that game. But you're facing a really good defense once again this week 1 on the road now at Cleveland in a rivalry game, that in-state rivalry. And we have seen at some places this line has ticked in favor of the Browns. I'm seeing a 1 on the board. There's a 1.5 as well. But I think for the most part, we're probably either
2.5 at one time.
Yeah, it was 2.5.
It was 2.5 there. I thought the line would move. I wouldn't be surprised that the Thursday before this game, if it's down to 1 in the circuit contest or in any contest that you look at. I always look at those contest lines. They lock them in on Thursday as an indication of where they think the line's going to go for Sunday, because they've got to do a good job of predicting. It's kind of a peek look into the Sunday line, and we'll see if it moves. But we know they start slow. It doesn't mean they're not going to be a good team. It doesn't mean that Joe Burrow's not, but they've got a lot of new offensive line, right? They got Orlando Brown going to play right tackle, a left tackle. They got Jono Williams who's going to play right tackle, which is an interesting change because Williams is not a powerful guy. The one thing teams always would do to him is power him back. And at the right tackle position, he's going to get powered back. So we'll see how that all manifests itself once they get through training camp. And then we also know this. Zac Taylor was very, very aware of this spring. They didn't do very much. I mean, they were one of the few teams that didn't do much OTA days.
Yeah, I don't even think – weren't they one of the teams that didn't have an OTAs? I don't
think they did,
Yeah,
Femi.
I think they just had a mini camp.
They did.
Yeah,
so backup quarterback Trevor Siemian's not had a lot of reps in this offense. And let's face it, they're an 11-personnel team, which puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback, right? They're an 11-personnel team. They don't really run the ball very much. They want to be able to throw it. They use Burrow's skill, which is extremely talented, to manifest their offense, to move it forward. I think you have to adjust a little bit without Burrow. I don't think you can run the Burrow offense with Trevor Siemian. I can promise you that. I think, to me, as you go through the daily conversations, and getting past all the hyperbole of who's great and who's not and all this camp stuff, the injuries that you read about, and especially the one in Miami, where they trade for Jalen Ramsey at a fairly economic value in terms of compensation for the Rams, for the Dolphins. It didn't cost much. It cost them much when they got him because they had to pay him. But now we see that he's going to be out to at least December, which to me isn't good. And I think this puts a lot of pressure on Xavier Howard, who did not play well. And so Vic Fangio is going to have to adjust. Now, Cam Sutton, their second-round draft pick, he's got to come in and play right away and feel like, can he contribute to this team? Can he make a difference for them? Because they're going to be corner short. There's no denying it. I mean, that's one of the areas of weakness, especially when they couldn't count on Howard. Remember, they signed Byron Jones to that huge contract, right?
Yep.
And Byron Jones couldn't live up to it, right? And I know he got hurt, but even when he was playing, people went after him. Nobody went after Howard. And then all of a sudden, Howard couldn't run anymore. And Josh Boyer, their then defense coordinator, kept playing press man, and he kept getting beat down the field, which didn't make any sense, but that's what happened. That's why he's not employed any longer. So I think this is significant, this injury defensively to Miami, and how Vic adjusts. Now, the good part is they got time. Injuries that happen this early, you can overcome. I know you're not going to find another player as good as Ramsey. I get that. But at least you have time now to adjust your scheme. You have time now to kind of say, okay, we wanted to be a press man team. We wanted to put Ramsey on the best receiver and double everybody else. That's out the window. Now we're going to need to figure this out.
And when you look at their depth chart, there's still a pretty good secondary that they have. I mean, Javon Holland is a guy that we're both high on in that DB room. There, we had the Blue Chips, Red Chips series for the safeties. Javon Holland, one of the best in the league. And Deshaun Elliott, who they bring over from, I think he was in Detroit last year. He used to be in Baltimore. A little bit older now, but at least a veteran presence there in that DB room. I think they could still get by because of Vic Fangio, but it does, I think, at least limit their upside early on in the season. Maybe if Ramsey's able to go and they can get him for the push, for the playoff push, and Tua's healthy and all that, they can kind of reach what they thought that they could in this offseason. But at least in the interim right now, it limits their upside, I think, defensively.
Well, I mean, when you're limited at corner, Femi, how good you are at safety. When you're limited at corner, you become a zone team. You have to, right? And Xavier Howard's not a really good zone player. He's not a good off player. Vic likes to play some off coverage. And Kadar Koho, the kid that was a college free agent last year that made their team, is their nickelback. You know, the kid they drafted from Noah, and I can't say his last name, from Auburn, their first-round pick, has not played well. They signed Kean Crossan as a free agent, but he's a special teams player. Nick Needham is really their nickel player, but he's on PUP. He's not healthy right now. So this secondary, the two concerns you have about Miami, and there's significant concerns, is their corner situation and their offensive line. For all the talk about how great they are on offense, and they are explosive, they got two quarterbacks hurt last year, Tua twice and Teddy Bridgewater twice, both concussions. So you got to be really careful here. Are they going to be able to protect? They've done nothing to help their offensive line. Their offensive line, Armstead's on PUP, not surprising, right? So, you know, Connor Williams, they signed as the center last year. Are they going to be good enough up front? I think that's the question mark.
What do you make of their Week 1 game? They're going to visit the Los Angeles Chargers, which will be a fun game. Herbert versus Tua, that's always a fun conversation on the timeline. But right now, Los Angeles is a 2.5-point home favorite. Do you think this number, because I think this is probably going to close 3, just given the Ramsey injury and the closer we get to kickoff, that maybe we get up to Chargers as a field goal favorite there. What do you make of this? Like, would you like Miami getting a field goal, or would you rather just bet the Chargers right now at -2.5?
No, I think I like Miami here because I think Fangio is going to make a huge difference. I think Fangio is going to make a difference in what they do to attack Justin Herbert. We still have to wait and see with the Chargers injury situation, because the one thing we know about the Chargers is they don't stay healthy.
Yeah.
But I think defensively, what they need to do is the Chargers have done nothing defensively to improve themselves, especially with their run defense, right? They really haven't. And so, I mean, I know they signed Eric Kendricks, but the reality here is, can they play run? And can they stay healthy? And can they rush the passer? We know Joey Bosa can. Can Khalil Mack still do it at his age? If you look at what Khalil Mack has done since the great seasons in Oakland, he's trended the wrong way. The one first year in Chicago was great, but since then, it has not been what the media makes it out to be. So I think, to me, I like Miami here because I like Fangio's ability to understand what Kellen Moore's going to do. Remember, let's go back to the game. Denver goes into Dallas. Dallas is really playing well. Denver's not playing so good. Vic's the head coach. Took 14 points in the fourth quarter for Dallas to score to make it even a respectable game. Denver dominated that game. Vic understands what Kellen Moore's doing offensively.
Yeah, no, he absolutely kicked his tail in that game. So that's we don't need to relive that one because I remember that one very vividly.
Sorry, Femi. I apologize for that.
Let's not open up old wounds here.
Well, but see, that's an important game in handicapping.
Yeah.
And it won't get talked about at all during the week. But as a bettor and a betting network, we have to, because that allows you to understand Vic going against the guy he's going to go. So it's a chess match that they played. And you can understand he knows what he has to do to stop him. And Vic will do a good job. They still have their front seven's good now. I mean, their front seven is good. And that front seven will put pressure on the Charger offensive line.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.